Hey, it's Tpok, and I'm back in Hate Plus, and we only have 7 left. So let's just jump right in. Of course he doesn't share your optimism. Room status dirty. At long last my final report has been completed. I had to get someone else to submit it for me, but finally my work is starting to pay off. I have an audience with the Counselor of Engineering to present the matter for his consideration. I was so happy to write the recommendations section, however, thinking about the future and how I could do work that was actually recognized as valuable and help safeguard the ship's future. It makes me feel as though I have a purpose once more. It is a feeling I have forgotten over these past few years, but I would like to remember it again. My husband does not share my optimism. Things have been strained with us as of late. We have never been able to communicate under the best of circumstances, but even more now, I feel as though there's a wedge between us. When I told him about having a chance to prove myself and how I was looking forward to the future, he just seemed upset. I wanted him to be proud of me for making it this far, despite all the difficulties. I wanted him to be as supportive of me as he was from the start. Sorry about that. I had someone at the door, so I want to feel like I'm not doing this alone. I pleaded with him as we got ready for bed. What are you going to do if they ignore you after all that? What if they don't get through with what you want? Go through with what you want? What then? He asked me. He seemed disappointed. Have you even considered that possibility? It's unlikely. The data is irrefutable and easy to understand. Oh, she doesn't get it. Radiation is unquestionably the cause of decreased fertility in Makonghua, I told him. I have confidence that no reasonable person could disregard my report. Why are they fighting? I thought he was good for her. It's hard, but he should have been like this a long time ago, for her own good. Fine, I'm sure it is, He trailed off. I don't care, I'm going to bed now. He turned his back on me. Wait, I said, hurrying over to sit in front of him. What if I did make plans for the extremely unlikely event that things do not work out? Would that make you happy? Forget it, he said, annoyed. I mean it, I said. I do not want to be the cause of you being upset. I want things to be amicable between us again. I'm willing to make contingencies for things that I do not believe will occur, if it is something that will make you happy. I don't know what the hell that means. You're doing that thing where you talk over my head, and I hate that, he scowled. Okay, this is just painful to read. I'm sorry, I said. If you want me to consider things that might not work out, I will consider it. Let's consider it. I don't think it'll happen, but there's no harm in considering it. What's the point? I'm sure you'll just find some smart-talking way around it in the end. Anyway, so you can just go back to your self-obsessed science project shit in the end. You always do, he said angrily. Please don't say that, I said, my voice quavering. You're my husband. I love you more than anything. Please don't you stop taking me seriously, too. He looked away, and there was a long pause. I felt like crying. Just minutes before, I was so happy. Eventually, he made eye contact with me. He seemed to be confused. Sorry, he said in a sheepish manner. Do you really mean that? You love me? Yes, of course, I stated. You've never said that to me before, he said. I was skeptical. Are you sure? I asked. I'm absolutely positive, he told me. I was sure he was wrong, but as he had just apologized to me, I saw no reason to worsen things by arguing. Well, I do, I said. I love you very much. Come here, you, he said, grabbing me, pulling me onto his lap just like the old days. He hugged me, and I was unable to stop myself from crying at that moment. What's wrong? He asked. I'm happy, I told him. Oh, he said. Let's make fallback plans, I said, in case I am unable to convince them. What would you like? He was quiet for a moment. I want to have kids, he said. Not just because it would help them with the money, I just want to have kids. I want to have a girl, an adorable little girl who will be smart and pretty and dedicated, just like her mother. And after that, maybe we could have a couple of boys. She'll have to learn to keep them in line, but I can't teach her that. I can teach her that, and you can teach her science. I'm so glad. Yeah. All right, I said. You promise? He asked. After all this is done, if your presentation doesn't lead to a job, you promised me you'll settle down and we'll try to have kids? I can make no promises with regards to gender, but I promise if my presentation is unsuccessful, I will give up and we will try to have kids, I said. It's so nice that they agreed on these things together. He's so nice. Yeah, good for him. It seemed to comfort him a great deal. I felt guilty and hoped that he did not have his hopes up. It is unlikely that the report will be ignored, so I will not be following through on that promise. In the future, maybe we will anyway, but it was a promise that would not lead to anything because I'm certain that I would be very busy with work in the future. No, never mind. Ah, jeez, you didn't even mean it? Can't you see you'd be happier that way? I hope it does not disappoint him. I'm happy now, though I'm optimistic for the future. I have an audience that will lead to something being done about our society's greatest problem, and with the irrefutable and extensive proof I have compiled, I will be taken seriously again. Wait, but that date is right before... Oh, I get it. Right before computers were wiped. Yep. Oh yeah, it is. In just a matter of days, I will be on track again. That's why you keep hard copies. I'm also happy because after I promised that, he took me by the chin, smiled, and said to me, I'm going to hold you to that. I'm also going to kiss you now. I nodded. I'd like that, I told him. When he did, I'd never felt such relief in my life. I had my husband caring about me again, and I had a future. I had a value and a purpose. And finally, it will not just be me repeating those things to me. Excuse me. It will not just be me repeating these things to myself. I have persevered for so long, and soon it will pay off. In just a matter of days. I also enjoyed the kiss aside from its symbolic meaning. It simply felt very nice. I could have melted in his arms right there. I'm certain of it. Everything will be alright. Well, at least she had such a sweet husband at her side. That's what counts, but she must have been devastated. Yeah. Memorial Speech Draft by Park Jin-sung. Do we know who this is? So this is about So Young's husband. Who's... I can't click it. Okay, never mind. Hi, I'm Park Jin-sung. If you don't know who I am, I'm the student representative and, in Professor Kim's absence, now acting president of Academics Against Neo-Confucianization. I'd like to think we're close. We were close, but truthfully, I didn't know Professor Kim very well. I've only been his student for a mere 5 years, my entire adult lifetime. But for him, the time I knew him was a flash in the pan, a mere fraction of a 3-decade-long academic career. I can say, however, the time in which I knew him was a time that he considered to be one of the most pivotal in his lifetime, the founding of the AANC. He was the last holdout professor to teach classes exclusively using Korean script over Chinese script. His specialty was in Earth history, and where nobody else did, he recognized McGung White University President Oyuna's program of promoting Neo-Confucian classics for what it is, a retrograde ideology with myriad problematic aspects, not least of all involving the intersectionality of classism and sexism. If the language of the classics isn't good enough for you, what is? There's a lot of good things written in Hangul, you know. Honestly, Hangul is so much easier to learn than any Chinese characters, because Hangul is letter-based. It has like an alphabet, which makes everything easy. He was one of the smartest people I've ever known, both a mentor and a father figure to me. I don't know why, but he saw a lot in me, and I've struggled immensely to live up to his expectations. No doubt he would be disappointed in what I'm about to do, and it pains me to say this. As of today, academics against Neo-Confucianization will be officially disbanded. Like, what? Huna, your silly comics about maids? There's other things. Professor Kim was an extraordinary and stubborn man who had the determination and charisma to fight to the end. He was unique in that regard, a pinnacle above all others. Nobody could possibly fill his shoes. Without him, AANC doesn't have the leadership or the clout to keep going on. In this past 2 months, I've tried my hardest, but the sad reality of this matter is, I've let him down, and I cannot take the role of that extraordinary man. With nobody else willing or able to step up to that role, I'm afraid there's just no point in going on. To everyone who believed in me, I'm so sorry. To everyone who believed in Professor Kim, I'm especially sorry. This is my failure, not his. I will, however, thank the university for graciously deciding, despite their disagreements, to dedicate this auditorium in memorial of him. This sure is like a lot of flowery language to defend barbarianism. I ask you not to remember him by what has happened to ANC in his absence, but to remember him for his willingness to fight for what he believed in, for his brilliance and compassion, for all the scholarship he contributed on the subject he loved, for his ability to inspire anyone to understand the importance of studying history. I'll end on this note. When I was having an absolute misery of a time with some silly adolescent relationship problem, I confided in him. Jeez, what's with all the swearing, though? Well, like, this was a speech for men to hear, so it's okay. Where's the language? I confided in him, rambling for 2 whole hours about how I didn't know what to do, and could he offer me any advice. He listened to it all very patiently, and when I was done, he was silent, as he thought about it for a good while. Finally, he said to me, "Here's the most important thing, Mr. Park. For fuck's sake, it's not always about being clever. You have to be decent to her." For fuck's sake, it's not always about being clever. Good advice. That is good advice. You have to be decent. It's easy to be angry, to cast blame, to be spiteful. But I hope if there's any way I can redeem myself in his eyes and live up to the standards he set, it's making sure his legacy is inspiring people to be critical, to be curious, but to above all else, always be decent. You have to be decent. Thank you. I like that. You should be decent. Okay. Hyo So-young, President's arrest. So they never found out who killed Professor Kim after all. I guess not. In my entire life, I've never had a more exhausting month. I'm supposed to be the second most powerful woman on the ship when it comes to security, yet I increasingly feel powerless and utterly drained. It's not as if I haven't dealt with serious crises before, yet this is just one thing I'm powerless against it. After another. I've completely hit a dead end in finding the bastard who murdered my husband. There have been flagrant acts of outright sabotage leading up to the election. Councillor Mute has been powerless to stop the council from enacting horrible legislation like the Unity Act. And then, while I was trying to enjoy a single night with my little girl, eating dinner, the last chance I will surely have before the election in 3 days, I could not even do that without things somehow managing to become unimaginably worse. Drop what you're doing right now, we yelled, suddenly appearing in my dining room without any warning. There's no time to talk, but I need you and your best officers at the president's residence within like 5 minutes. Is this about? I started to ask, but was immediately interrupted. I said no time to talk, she said, shouting more authoritatively than I ever heard her in my life. Call your men when you're walking, okay? You've literally got 5 minutes to get there. In fact, don't walk. Run. I'm not joking. Now, okay? Sorry, sweetie. Mommy has to run, I told Sohee, and then raced into action post-haste. Hyo So-young understood the importance of having children, at least. She had a daughter named Sohee. I don't know how, but I managed. Old Meat wouldn't even let her be a good mother. I'm sure it was important. I don't know how, but I managed to make it down in 5 minutes myself, somehow, to see Mute arguing loudly with a man in an electoral monitor's uniform, with several more in tow. Okay, good. My lieutenant's arrived. She can put up with your bullshit instead, she said. Geez, Hyune, what could possibly be more important than being a good mother? Yes, ma'am, I said, catching my breath. It was pretty bad. I'm way too old to be running like a young woman like that. My officers are on their way. They should be. Never mind, they're there. I was promptly joined by 3 men from one corridor, with several more running from the other direction. You don't have jurisdiction here, the leader of the group of the electoral monitor sparked. You cannot stop me, counselor. I have orders to arrest. Wow, yikes. I have no patience for this. Take it from here, please, So-young, Mute said, disappearing from the outside screen. But then she said, only to my earpiece, he's right, we don't. Stall for as long as you possibly can without breaking any laws. Ugh, it's just completely unfair to put a woman in that situation. I know, I'd be terrified. Yes, ma'am, I said, nervous from lack of information. I still had no idea what the hell was going on at this point. I thought I would later learn that she was getting President Park to change the ship's route password so it at least couldn't be transferred to Chief Counselor Ryu. I just arrived. I'm not briefed, I said honestly, having no idea what was going on at this point. What's going on? You do not have authority here. Step aside, he barked. I stared him down. I recognized him. He was a former security officer I had personally recommended to be given the electoral monitor unit because he was useless, but too politically difficult to get rid of. He was loud, but that was all he had going for him. Then I grabbed him by his collar. There's no way I could have actually overpowered a man his size, but I knew he was a coward, or at least I hoped my assessment was right. Listen here, I'm going to say this once and only once, I said, having absolutely no clue what I was going to say. I am under orders from the Counselor of Security not to let you through. If you try to go through me, I will have you arrested on the spot for interfering with security operations. But By the time I finished saying that, all my officers had arrived, and I had a good 10 men and women in various degrees of being uniformed and armed standing behind me. "I'll have you arrested for it," he started to yell. Then I realized what would actually do it and put him down, quickly interrupting. "Shut up, officer. I outrank you, and my orders outrank yours," I said, counting on the hope that he actually was following orders. "Let's be civilized, and do this properly through the chain of command. Do you think either of our bosses want to see an altercation between security forces? Just explain to me what's going on and you're in the right. And if you're in the right, I'll let you through. For the record, I'm absolutely confident that we could have taken them all down if it had come to a physical altercation, but it would have been a truly bad idea to do so, with serious political repercussions. But still, I'm certain we could have. For the record, the president and most of his campaign team is under arrest for conspiracy to commit electoral fraud," he said angrily. Not escalating things further, thankfully. "It should be obvious that this falls under our jurisdiction. You have no standing here." "Really, they were going to arrest the president? That's really serious, wow." "Of course," I said. "Just let me confirm that the arrest warrant is in order, and I will gladly stand aside." He seemed momentarily taken aback, so I kept talking. "I thought you didn't like the president, though. Why are they?" "Because, that's what being in charge of security means. It's her duty." "You do have an arrest warrant, right? We're talking about the president himself here. A signed warrant from the Council of Justice is required by law," I said, counting on him not knowing that wasn't true. "If you don't move right now, I'll have you arrested," he scowled. "Mr. Hyo, listen to yourself," I said, scolding him in the same voice I use with my daughter and my maids. "I'm just concerned that you follow proper protocol. Do you think Chief Counselor Ryu," he suddenly flinched, "will ever promote you if you make a botched job out of the most high-profile arrest in the ship's history? I'll ask you again, one last time, for your own sake, do you have all the paperwork from the Counselor of Justice in order?" He started, then stopped. "I'll confirm it with him. None of you move," he shouted at his officers, and stepped aside to talk privately on his earpiece, presumably to the Chief Counselor of Justice, while all officers tried their hardest to stare down mine. Only when his back was turned did I let myself exhale a sigh of relief. No officer I would have trusted with something so important would have flinched like that. "Ma'am," I said quietly into my own earpiece, "if you need more than a minute, I can do that, but I think it will very rapidly get unpleasant. Do not use violence, So Young. Absolutely do not, under any circumstances, use violence, okay?" "Understood, ma'am, but that's all I can do at this point," I said. "Sorry, he's back." Wow, intense. The electoral monitor returned, with slightly less of a scowl than before. The Chief Counselor of Justice confirmed that everything is in order. He also gave me the permission to arrest anyone standing in the way of executing the warrant. "Chief Security Officer or not," he said smugly. "Very well," I said, trying to think of something else I could say or do. I couldn't, short of punching him in the smug jaws he deserved. I spoke into my headset right in front of his face. "Ma'am, if you don't respond now, I'm going to have no choice." Intense is an understatement. She's way too emotionally volatile for this. She reappeared on the screen outside the president's door. "Okay, there's no need for trouble here. He's on his way right now, and we'll be surrendering peacefully," Counselor Mute announced to him. "Mr. Hyo, I trust that won't be a problem." "He has 1 minute, Counselor," he said. It was almost certainly the most intense minute of my entire life. Everyone was silent, every party involved in trying to stare down the other. But sure enough, after a minute, President Park emerged. For the record, I strongly protest this Outrageous fascist circumvention of the democratic process, he declared loudly. But I will peacefully surrender in the hope that this is dealt with swiftly. As if you can say that, you traitor scum. You're the one planning to fix the elections and orchestrating the acts of sabotage. If there's any justice, you'll die in prison. The electoral monitor snapped as one of his men handcuffed the president. Mr. Shio, my department will be supervising President Park every step of the way. Let your boss know that if he's even treated slightly improperly, I'll know about it right away, okay? You'd said. Just so we're absolutely clear. Just don't interfere, he said. Take him away. From that point onwards, it was, as President Park himself would call it, an utter shitshow. And to that circumstances would actually cause us to side with that man on anything. But in the end, there was nothing that could be done. I could see it in Mute's eyes that for once she too had felt as though she could only accept defeat this time. I don't understand what just happened, I said to her, after the arrest was made and the president was locked up before the night. Me neither, was all she said without any confidence. I guess it's hard to be tough, huh? Yeah, see how it's just not really suited for how emotional women are. I'm scared, man, I admitted. Yeah, she said, not elaborating any further. Yeah. With everything that happened last night, supervising the arrest powerlessly, I couldn't even make it home until late last night. Far past the hour anyone was still awake. I went to check on my daughter, peacefully asleep. It's just not fair for her. Already tucked in by one of the maids, then I fell to my knees and lamented that I was so powerless I couldn't have even been there to do that for her. Okay guys, I'm gonna end it here. So we'll probably have 2 more. Considering these aren't that long. Because these 3 were all really long. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.